All right, what is up, Fantasy Nation? The Fantasy Umpire here, Danny Kitchen. Appreciate you guys joining me for another weekly recap here. It was a pretty crazy week 4, a lot to cover, some really key injuries that we need to touch on and talk about some backups here that are going to be relevant in week 5 and beyond. So it's going to be the same kind of structure this week as it's been before. I'm going to go over every game, all 16 games from week 4, a couple of key takeaways, injuries of note, and then looking ahead to week 5 and beyond, and try to highlight some of those key fantasy players that you should be aware of and be on the lookout for ahead. So let's just dive right into it. If you don't already follow me, please do on Twitter, at Fantasy Umpire. I try to give you guys the best updates, quick updates. I try to stay on top of things as best I can. I do have a full-time job on top of this, so this is just kind of a fun little hobby of mine. But yeah, thank you for following me. If you do, if you don't, please hit that follow button. Go ahead and like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you guys never miss a video of mine. The first game on the docket, it feels like a lifetime ago, Cowboys and Giants on Thursday Night Football. This was a rough game. I did not watch this one. I saw the highlights. I'm a Giants fan, not wearing the Giants jersey this week for a reason. Felt like a game they should have won. They could have won. They did not. Daniel Jones played okay. He threw 40 times, which is probably 40 times more than he should, but connected on 29 of those 40 attempts, 281 yards for him. But he did have that one interception, bad one there, and he had a couple of other bad balls where he underthrew Malik Neighbors and a few other guys. Not a whole lot to talk about in the running game here. Singletary, 24 yards on the ground. Malik Neighbors is the story for the G-Men. He put together 12 catches for 115 yards. Like I said before, it could have been a lot more, a lot bigger than just that for Neighbors this week, but Daniel Jones underthrew him on a couple of balls. So if you drafted Malik Neighbors, you probably got him in the 2nd or 3rd round in this year's draft, and that's looking like an absolute bargain right now. He is an absolute stud, looks like potentially the best rookie wide receiver in this draft. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. is still kind of coming into his own over there in Arizona, but got to like what you see out of Neighbors, and a lot better days ahead, to be honest. I feel like this offense is just kind of scratching the surface. It's going to come down to how much Daniel Jones can kind of carry the squad, or at least not hurt them in the end. For the Cowboys, they squeak out the W in this one. Dak looked a little bit better, 22 of 27, 221 yards, 2 touchdowns for him, only 1 sack, which is obviously a positive there. Not a whole lot in the running game. Rico Dowdle, 46 yards on the ground, although he did add 1 catch for 15 yards and that touchdown through the air. CeeDee Lamb, 7 for 98 and a touchdown. So love to see that. If you drafted him with the first pick or even anywhere in the top 3 or 4, it's a win for you. And it's looking like a very valuable, possibly the overall wide receiver 1, but very valuable, very high-end wide receiver 1, if not the overall wide receiver 1. So great game out of him. Jake Ferguson, 7 for 49. That's pretty much what you come to expect with Ferguson. If you drafted him or if you're streaming him, you'll take that kind of stat line across the board. Looking ahead to week 5, G-Men go to Seattle. That's a tough game. Dallas to Pittsburgh on Sunday night. So they both have a couple of difficult matchups coming up. Seattle, I like the way they played. I like the fight that they had against the Lions in week 4. So I would expect them to come out guns blazing at home against the G-Men. Right now, Seattle's got 6 points at home. That might be too low. Right now, I'm probably going to stay away from that line, but the over-under at 43.5, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of defense in this one. I think it's going to be a lot of offense. So I would hammer the over there. Dallas going to Pittsburgh. That may be more of a defensive battle than people realize. Over-under set at 42.5. I would take the under there. Pittsburgh 2.5-point favorites at home. That might be a bit much for my liking. I think I'd go with Dallas at plus 2.5. Next up here, we have the Minnesota Vikings against the Green Bay Packers. This was a game that I thought was going to be the game of the week. It certainly didn't disappoint. It looked like Minnesota was going to run away with this one. They jumped ahead to a 28-7 lead at halftime. And then Green Bay came roaring back, 22 points in the 4th quarter, made this really close. They actually had a chance to win the game or at least make it even closer than it was in the final score there. So great things from both teams for Sam Darnold, 20 of 28 passing, 3 touchdowns, 1 INT. He continues his MVP season. I don't know what the odds are right now, but I got to imagine he's top 5, if not top 3 in MVP voting if the season were to end today. Jordan Love, 389 yards passing. He threw the ball 54 times. So very shocking, honestly, coming off the knee injury. I thought they might ease him into it, but obviously the game script and the way the Vikings came out guns blazing didn't really allow for that. So almost 400 yards passing for Love, 4 touchdowns. He did have 3 interceptions. So, again, knocking some of that rust off. He took 1 sack, but he looked great. That offense looked great. Christian Watson, one injury to note here. He went down with a high ankle sprain in this game. It sounds like he's going to avoid going on the IR, but he's probably going to miss 2 or 3 weeks. So Dontavian Wicks, he is the main beneficiary of that injury, I guess. And 5 catches, 78 yards, and 2 touchdowns for him yesterday. He consistently proves that with a larger workload or more playing time, he produces. So I would expect him to be the top waiver claim off the waiver wires this week. And for me, I would spend a good chunk of my fab budget if you're playing in one of those leagues. So boost for him, boost for Romeo Doubs, who had 4 for 39 in this one, and then boost for Jaden Reed, 7 for 139 and a touchdown. I highlighted Reed before week 4, just suggesting that he was my top buy low candidate before Jordan Love came back. So to me, Jordan Reed locked in top 15 wide receiver rest of season. He has top 10 upside in this offense, especially now that Christian Watson's out. Those targets are up for grabs. So love Dontavian Wicks, love Jaden Reed even more. Big fan of this offense. The one thing to note about the running game, looks like there's a pretty even split. I mean, Jacobs got 9 carries to Emmanuel Wilson's 8 on Sunday, but it's pretty much a 50-50 split. Emmanuel Wilson looks really, really good. Didn't have a great game in this one, but again, the game script didn't really allow for much of a running game. So if you have Josh Jacobs, try to sell. If you have Emmanuel Wilson, I would just hold him and hope that he carves out even more of a role here in this offense. And then don't forget, Marshawn Lloyd's coming back in a couple of weeks. That's a name to keep in mind and put a pin in that one because he could become a factor down the home stretch of the season. For the Vikings, they keep it rolling. Aaron Jones, 22 carries, 93 yards. Didn't get that touchdown I thought he would get heading back to Green Bay, kind of a homecoming for him. Sam Darnold, 7 carries, rushes on the ground, 15 yards. Jordan Addison had the 1 touchdown on the ground, 7-yard run. In the passing game, Justin Jefferson, 85 yards and a touchdown. Addison, 72 and a touchdown. Darnold hit him with a beautiful ball over the middle of the field. This offense is clicking. Josh Oliver had a touchdown. A lot of weapons, and again, Kevin O'Connell, as long as he's calling the shots, this team's going to produce. Looking ahead to next week, Minnesota's hosting the Jets. I believe that game is in London at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So anytime there's a game overseas, I like to temper expectations. So normally if Minnesota was at home, if this game was in Minneapolis, I would give them the slight edge with that defense. But going overseas, this may favor the veteran quarterback in Aaron Rodgers and the veteran squad really in the New York Jets. So I like the Jets in this one. The over-under at 40.5 is way too low. I think this game is more of a shootout, so I would hammer the over. And Minnesota getting 2.5 again in London, I think that's a mistake. I would take the Jets at plus 2.5. So that wraps up our second game. Third game on the docket here, Denver Broncos at the New York Jets. They squeak out the win here, 10-9, and probably the ugliest game of the week. Not a whole lot to talk about here. And again, this is one where if you have any of the Jets players, throw it out the window. This was a weird game, awful game script. The weather didn't cooperate, so don't worry about it. But if you have Breece Hall, I'm a little bit worried. Braylon Allen is clearly taking a bigger and bigger chunk of that run game in the offense, and he looks really good. So he's deserving of it. So Breece Hall, 10 carries for 4 yards, averaging 0.4 yards a carry. Braylon Allen, 8 carries for 34 yards. Again, he looks a little bit better, but this was a bad game for the entire offense. Mike Williams, you're seeing him get more and more. 4 catches, 67 yards for him. His role is going to continue to grow. Garrett Wilson, 5 for 41. Don't worry about it. If you have Wilson, don't freak out. He's had a tough stretch to start the season. He was facing Pat Surtain, blanket coverage. He didn't leave his side the entire game. So forget about it. Honestly, 5 for 41 is better than I was expecting. I have Garrett Wilson in both of my leagues, and I benched him, just kind of anticipating this rough game from the entire offense, but specifically the passing game. And Denver's defense looks good, so you got to give them credit. Cortland Sutton, 3 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown. He was kind of the lone bright spot for this offense. Javonte showed some juice, 16 carries for 77 yards, but Bo Nix just looks awful. 12 for 25, 60 yards and a touchdown. Again, the 60 yards going all 60 yards going to Cortland Sutton. So the Broncos got to change something over there. It's just not really working out. And I mentioned the Jets going to Minnesota, but really going to London next week. That's that 9:30 a.m. Eastern time game. Don't love that game, but I think that is a decent bounce back spot. I don't think the Minnesota defense that we've come accustomed to is going to show up necessarily overseas the way they have in Minneapolis. So I wouldn't worry too much there. And then Denver hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. A lot of turmoil there, a lot of questions. It sounds like Devontae Adams is leaving. He's actually requested a trade as of tonight. So I think he's definitely gone probably within the next couple of weeks. We'll see where he ends up. I know a lot of people are asking for the Chiefs, but I just don't see that happening. I could see him ending up in Pittsburgh or potentially New England, but God, if he ends up in Kansas City, look out. That'll be a scary good offense. So it already is a scary good offense, but with him, I mean, the sky's the limit. So moving on to the next game here, New Orleans at Atlanta. This also ended up being a good game. Atlanta squeaks this one out 26-24, but New Orleans had a couple of chances. They kind of blew this one in the end, but Kirk Cousins looking better and better, 21 of 35, 238 yards passing. He did have one interception. Still doesn't quite look like the old Kirk Cousins, and he still isn't, he never was mobile, but he was more mobile than he is now. So he looks like a statue back there. I'm concerned. I still think this team can obviously continue to win games. They did it here, but it's going to be ugly. Bijan Robinson owners, it is time to panic. I wouldn't necessarily sell, especially I wouldn't sell low on Bijan, but 7 carries, 28 yards, not good. 8 carries for 60 yards for Tyler Algier, even worse if you're a Bijan owner. Tyler Algier just looks fresher. He looks more explosive. Obviously different running styles, and Bijan, they need to get him out in space more, but I'm worried, and Bijan, he adds 4 for 46 in the air, kind of saves his fantasy day as a receiver, but just not what we were looking for if you're a Bijan manager. And then for New Orleans, Alvin Kamara, 77 yards on the ground and a touchdown. He had 7 for 42 through the air, once again proving to be one of the better, 3rd, 4th, 5th round draft picks. He was an absolute steal and seems like the focal point of this offense. So kudos to anyone that drafted him in those rounds. Taysom Hill comes back, first game back, 24 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns for him. Derek Carr didn't do a whole lot. He didn't really need to. They needed him to make a couple of plays late in this one, but 28 of 36, 239 yards passing. He had that one INT, a bad one. Chris Olave, 8 for 87 receiving. Rashid Shaheed, 8 for 83. This offense was getting things going, and it felt like it was just extremely inconsistent. They would have a great drive followed by an inconsistent drive. And so until the offense kind of gets going here and finds that consistency, it's going to be hard to really trust anyone aside from Alvin Kamara. So Atlanta this week hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Thursday Night Football. The line on this one, Atlanta favored by 1.5 points, over under set at 43.5. I think both of those are pretty fair. I'm going to have to think about this one. Tampa Bay going on the road. I do think Atlanta has a serious home field advantage here. So I will take Atlanta minus 1.5, I believe, in the end. And the over-under at 43.5 seems pretty fair to me. So I would probably leave that alone. For New Orleans, they are going to Kansas City on Monday night. So really a tough way to get over a tough loss. You have to go to the defending champs and try to squeak one out in Kansas City. So, Derek Carr is familiar with Kansas City. He should be able to, put some points on the board, but that's not exactly the bounce back opponent that you are looking for after a tough loss. So over under set at 42.5 in that game. That's pretty fair to me. I think I would take the over there. And then Kansas City 5-point favorites. Again, I think that's pretty fair. I would take KC -5 at home in a primetime spot. I just think they could, that game could end up being a blowout in the end. So I'm going to lean Kansas City there. Next game, Philadelphia at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay wins this one 33-16. Baker continues his MVP season. You talk about Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield's not too far behind. Both of them just playing amazing football right now. 30-47 for Baker, 347 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did take 2 sacks, but he looked amazing. Mike Evans, 8 for 94 and a touchdown. He was Baker's #1 target in this one. Godwin also had 6 for 69. Very nice. K. Dotton, 6 for 52. Rachaad White adding 2 for 35. But looking at the running game, it's a total 50-50 split now, but Bucky just looks better. They both had identical stat lines, 10 for 49, but Bucky had the rushing touchdown. He had a couple of broken tackles. He was facing stacked boxes more than Rachaad White. I just like him. To me, he passes the eye test. He looks like the better overall running back. And Rachaad White, again, he's dealing with that groin injury. So keep an eye on that. Typically, groin injuries don't just go away 1 week into the next. So that's a tough injury. It could linger throughout the season. If you have Bucky Irving, you can probably play him. He's kind of matchup dependent, but certainly do not sell him and do not drop him. He's locked in to your bench, and if you need a flex, he's worthy of it. So that's Tampa Bay. For Philadelphia, red alert here. I think we could be seeing the end of Nick Sirianni's tenure with the Eagles. He doesn't look like he has their attention. It seems like this team is lost. I know they're dealing with a lot of injuries, but man, getting smoked on the road in Tampa Bay, the same team that knocked you off in the playoffs. I forget what Nick Sirianni's record is since the playoffs or since later in the season last year, but it's terrible. I saw something like, 2-8 or 2-6 over his last 8 or 10 games. So he's feeling that he should be in the hot seat. This team has way too much talent to lose to Tampa Bay, let alone get blown out by them. So Saquon, 10 for 84 on the ground. He was the lone bright spot for the offense, 2 for 32 in the air. Goddard, 7 for 62. I mean, again, this team just doesn't look right. Something's off here. It seems like they need change, and that change is probably going to come at the expense of Sirianni. Tampa Bay going to Atlanta next week. This is the Thursday night game in Atlanta. Again, Tampa Bay's feeling good. They're feeling hot. They knock off an NFC rival and a contender in the NFC. Now they're going to another one with the Atlanta Falcons. So we'll see what they can do there. Again, I think that spread is pretty fair. Atlanta -1.5 and the over-under set at 43.5. Not a whole lot to kind of dissect in that one. And then the Philadelphia Eagles are, where are they? The Philadelphia Eagles, am I missing something? Oh, they are on a bye. There we go. So they are one of the 4 teams on a bye next week. I keep forgetting that week 5 is the start of the bye weeks. Philadelphia, Chargers, Titans, and the Lions are all on bye. So the bye comes at a good time for Philadelphia. Hit the reset button, get Devontae Smith back, get AJ Brown back. Let's get healthy and see where this season goes. But to me, Sirianni, time's ticking for him. Cincinnati Bengals, next game up here, they beat the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. Joe Burrow looked pretty good in this one, 22 of 31, 232 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Chase Brown, though, he's kind of the story for this team. 15 carries, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. It seems like he's taken over that backfield. Zach Moss isn't going to just disappear and go away. They paid him in the offseason for a reason. He's going to be a part of the game plan going forward. But to me, Chase Brown looked like the better back. And, obviously the stats don't lie. Um, but this offense needed this win. They needed to get on track. It seemed like they did. So this was a good game for them. Jamar Chase, he breaks off the long 63-yard touchdown, finishes the game with 3 for 85. T. Higgins, 6 for 60. Starting to feel like he's getting some momentum this season. And then Carolina, Chuba Hubbard, 18 carries, 144 yards rushing, a touchdown, and then in the air, 4 catches for 17 yards. I know that Jonathan Brooks is entering the fold now, I believe starting next week or the week after, but it's going to be hard for this Carolina coaching staff to just bench Chuba Hubbard. So if you have Chuba, I would be looking to sell high right now. But if you have Jonathan Brooks, I'm a little nervous because he might be coming into a 50-50 split. Now, the second he gets a full workload or a decent workload, we're going to see the talent disparity there. And I think the coaching staff will slowly give Brooks the role. And I think by week 9 or 10, Brooks is the unquestioned starter, bell cow back for this team. But, out of the gates, I think we need to temper expectations. Deontay Johnson, another great game, 7 for 83 and a touchdown. Could have been more, dropped one. I think he dropped 1 or 2 balls in this game. He had 13 targets in total, but I also know that Andy Dalton missed him on a couple of throws. So this could have been a monster game for Deontay Johnson. Xavier Legette, another great game for him, 6 for 66 and a touchdown. Jonathan Mingo, 3 for 24. That's pretty much it for this offense. But Andy Dalton, again, another solid game. They don't come out with the win, but 220 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. He did have the 1 interception, but you'll take that if you're the Carolina Panthers. And for Cincinnati, like I said, much needed win. That's great. You beat up on the Panthers. Now let's see what they can do against Baltimore. Baltimore coming to town, going to Cincinnati in week 5. They are the road favorites, 2.5-point favorites. Over under set at 50.5. That could be the game of the week 5. Should be absolute fireworks. And then for the Carolina Panthers, we have the Chicago Bears on the road. I think the Bears smoke them. I think that defense is going to be really challenging for Dalton and Carolina. I want no part of that Carolina offense in Chicago. The over-under set at 41.5. That might be too high. I think this is going to be a really low-scoring game, possibly the lowest-scoring game of the week, although I know we have Miami at New England. But I'm staying away from that game. Chicago, 3.5-point favorites. That's fair. I would take Chicago up to 4.5 or even 5-point favorites at this point. So that's how I feel about Carolina. Next game, Texans beating the Jaguars at home. This was a lot closer than people thought it was going to be. It was 17-13 at halftime. Jacksonville comes out, scores a touchdown in the third, tighten things up, and then Houston takes the lead with 7 in the fourth, and they don't look back. So they win this one 24-20. CJ Stroud kind of has his, breakout game here if you need it. 345 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. He also added 17 yards on the ground. So kind of doing it all. Cam Akers, 13 carries, 53 yards, not really moving the needle for anyone there. This team needs Joe Mixon back. It's so clear why they went out and got him as one of the key offseason signings. And, it's just a different offense. This is one of those teams that runs the ball to open up the pass game. So they need him back, and I think they're going to get him back. So we'll see what happens. They have Buffalo in week 5. I think Mixon comes back, and I think, again, we saw what Derrick Henry just did against this Buffalo run defense. That's probably the recipe that the Houston Texans are going to try to come up with here, is a run game to beat the Bills. So Nico Collins through the air, 12 catches, 151 yards and a touchdown on 15 targets. Again, if you drafted him in the second round, absolute steal. He looks like, he definitely is this team's unquestioned number one receiver, but he looks like a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. Stephon Diggs, 5 for 69. Very nice. Dare Ogunbowale, 47 yards in the air and 1 touchdown, 7 yards rushing for him. This offense is starting to click, so look out. And for Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence, the struggles continue. 169 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, but he missed a couple of easy layups too. So this offense is out of sync. Tank Bigsby looks like the better running back, 7 for 90 for him. ETN, 11 for 50. He actually came out early in this one. We saw Tank Bigsby kind of take over, and he had a couple of nice long runs. So we'll see what happens. This looks like a 50-50 split, maybe a backfield that we want to avoid right now. But if you're asking me for one of the two running backs that I want on my roster, it's Tank Bigsby for sure. Brian Thomas Jr. looks like an absolute stud. I said that he was going to be one of the best rookie wide receivers in the preseason. He certainly looks the part. 6 for 86 for him and a touchdown, and Christian Kirk 7 for 61 and a touchdown. So Jacksonville made this one closer than I think we all thought they would, but in the end, they can't squeak it out. And we talked about Nick Sirianni being on the hot seat. Doug Peterson, you are also on the hot seat. And so for Jacksonville, you're going to host Indianapolis in week 5, and that could be the Jaguars fighting for Doug Peterson's job. So see what happens there. Jacksonville is the home favorite, 3-point favorites against Indianapolis. I would take Indy in that one. Over under set at 46.5. I think that's fair, but let's watch the injury reports because Indianapolis has a couple of key injuries, and 46.5 points is a lot if they're playing without Jonathan Taylor or Anthony Richardson. So that's going to be a tough game for them. Houston hosting the Buffalo Bills. Again, one of the games of the week. To me, that one in Cincinnati and Baltimore are two of my favorites. Buffalo is actually the road favorite, 1-point favorite in Houston, over under set at 47.5. I do think Buffalo wins this game, so I'll take Buffalo -1. But I think the over under at 47.5 might be a little high. So I'm going to take the under there. We saw Buffalo's offense struggle a little bit last week. That's a high total. And like I said, I think Houston's going to look to get the ground game going, get it on track. And with Joe Mixon probably making his return, they can afford to do that in week 5. Excuse me. Next up, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers going to Indianapolis. They lose this one to the Colts. This was a hard-fought game. This was a battle. Indianapolis jumps ahead to a 14-0 lead at the end of the first. Both teams get a field goal in the second, and then Indianapolis holds them off with 10 points in the fourth. But Pittsburgh made this really close, and Justin Fields absolutely balled out. 312 yards passing for him and a touchdown. He also added 55 yards on the ground and 2 TDs. Rushing for him, Cordell Patterson, 6 for 43. He looked good. Najee Harris didn't really do too much, 13 carries for 19 yards. But George Pickens, 7 for 113 in the air. Could have been even bigger. He had 11 targets. He looks like an absolute stud, target hog in this offense. Pat Freiermuth, 5 for 57. He has the touchdown on the receiving end. And for Indianapolis, Jonathan Taylor gets hurt in this one. High ankle sprain. They're calling it a mild variety. Typically with high ankle sprains, players miss between 2 and 4 weeks. It sounds like he's only going to miss 1 week, maybe 2, but something to monitor this week and certainly beyond. Anthony Richardson also leaves this game with a hip pointer. It sounds like he might be able to play in week 5, but again, something to monitor. And Joe Flacco looked really good, 168 yards passing for him, 2 touchdowns. He comes in relief and looks fantastic. I don't know how old he is, but it's pretty incredible what he's able to do. He was successful in Cleveland last year. It looks like he's successful in Indy this year. So I think if you're the Colts, play it safe with both guys, especially Richardson. Flacco can hold it down. And to be honest, the passing game looked a lot better with Flacco. So Michael Pittman Jr., if you manage him on your fantasy roster, you're feeling pretty good. 6 for 113. Josh Downs, if you have him on your roster, you're feeling pretty good. 8 for 82 and a touchdown on 9 targets. But this offense as a whole, I think they're going to be more balanced. I think we're going to see more production from the wide receiver group. And in the run game too, you're not going to have Richardson vulturing those goal line carries or, running every other play. So I think the running backs are going to see some more success too. So keep an eye on that. If Taylor's out this week, Trey Sermon becomes a plug and play RB2. So definitely keep an eye on that. And for next week, the Pittsburgh Steelers are hosting Dallas on Sunday Night Football. Again, I love that game. Pittsburgh getting 2.5 points at home makes me nervous against a team like Dallas. But we'll see about that one. Indianapolis going to Jacksonville. Again, Jacksonville 3-point favorites at home. I like Indianapolis in that one. I think that they're going to surprise some people, especially if Flacco plays. Next game here, the LA Rams going to Chicago. Chicago wins this one 24-18. The big takeaway for Chicago, we all thought that Roshan Johnson was going to lead the way in that backfield. We knew you could run on the Rams. We saw their teams do it previous weeks. This week, it was DeAndre Swift, 16 for 93. He had that long 36-yard run. He has a touchdown on the ground. He has 72 yards through the air. It was the DeAndre Swift show from the jump. Be patient. If you have Roschon Johnson, be patient. He's going to have his boom weeks. He had a touchdown too, 26 yards on the ground and a TD. So he's going to be just fine. This offense will continue to improve, but the play calling is atrocious. They're not setting Caleb Williams up for any kind of success. 17 of 23 for him, 157 yards passing and a touchdown. But I mean, they're not giving him any layups, and he needs some quick throws, get the ball in DJ Moore's hand. DJ did save his day with a touchdown, but 3 for 22 isn't going to get it done. For the Rams, Kyren Williams, another good game, 19 of 94 with a touchdown. Again, I'm surprised that we're not seeing Blake Corum. If you have Blake Corum, hold him. Do not drop him. But for right now, Kyren Williams is giving you no reason to bench him. So he looks like a potential league winner if he can stay healthy, but that's a big if. Jordan Whittington is a name to keep an eye on, 6 for 62 for him. As long as Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are out, I think Jordan Whittington is the number one wide receiver on this team. And Stafford looked okay, 224 yards passing. This is a tough Bears defense. I mentioned it before. They're my favorite defense in fantasy this week. They're going to be in week 5. They're going to be hosting the Carolina Panthers. So love them in that game. And the Rams are going back home. They're going to host the Green Bay Packers. That should be a shootout. That should be a fun game, high scoring, over under set at 47.5. That's way too low. That should be up over 50 in my opinion. Green Bay 3.5-point favorites on the road. I don't know about that, but I think that's a fair spread right now. I think we're going to see that come closer to 2 points as we get closer to kickoff. So that should be a really fun game. This game was a surprise. Commanders blow out the Arizona Cardinals 42-14. Arizona comes out, quick touchdown by Kyler Murray in the first quarter, and then not much else after that. In Washington, it was an avalanche. It was body blow after body blow. Jaden Daniels with the haymakers, 233 yards passing for him, a touchdown, 1 interception. Brian Robinson looked like an animal, 21 carries, 101 yards rushing, and a touchdown. Jeremy McNichols, 68 yards on the ground and 2 TDs, and then Jaden Daniels, the 1 rushing touchdown, 47 yards for him. Terry McLaurin, love to see another touchdown out of him, 7 for 52 and a TD. Again, unquestioned number 1 receiver. We know that this offense is going to run through that number 1 wide receiver. So you're feeling great about this team. If you have anyone on this roster, Brian Robinson, Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, you're feeling great. So they continue to explode and expand that offense. Kyler Murray, I don't know what the deal is with him. It seems like he's fantastic at the start of games. Specifically the first drive of every game, it seems to be going well for him. And then he can't quite get that rhythm after the fact. So not sure. Jonathan Gannon and that coaching staff needs to get together, figure this thing out because they're too talented. They have too many weapons. Trey McBride missed this game. That could have been a very big part of why this team struggled to get the ball downfield. I think he's a focal point, and to not have him and have the offense go through a rookie wide receiver, that's scary. So be patient there. James Conner, 100 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Trey Benson looked good, 9 for 50. Keep an eye on him. Again, if James Conner goes down, Trey Benson, unquestioned, starting running back here in an RB1 in fantasy. Marvin Harrison Jr., 5 for 45 and a touchdown. No one else really did anything in the receiving end. But again, this Cardinals team, they can be scary, but 1-3 start, not what we were expecting. This defense, not what we were expecting against Washington. But, they ran into a buzzsaw. The Commanders are a really good team. And I think Arizona is going to bounce back next week. Tough game for them. They're going to San Francisco. But again, that could be a shootout. The over-under set at 49.5. San Francisco getting 7.5 points at home. That's way too much. Give me Arizona. I actually like the Arizona money line in that game, but give me Arizona plus 7.5 all day long. Washington's going to host the Cleveland Browns at home. I like Washington. That game scares me a little bit. We got to see there's a couple of key injuries on Cleveland's defensive line, but that's a defensive line that can give Jaden Daniels and the Washington offensive line a lot of trouble. So we'll see how the front seven holds up, but that's a really tough game for them. In Washington, 3.5-point favorites at home. 44.5 is the over/under. I think that's fair, but again, I'm nervous for Washington going into that game. I think that might be a letdown game for them. All right, next up on our list, we have the New England Patriots losing to the San Francisco 49ers. New England just could never get the offense going in this one. They had a little something early on, and they had a fumble, then they got a drive going, then they had an interception. It was just an ugly game. So San Francisco dominates start to finish. For New England, let's see what we have in Drake May. Jacoby Brissett clearly is not getting the job done. He takes 6 sacks. He's a statue back there. Not what we want. And the run game, I mean, Ramondre Stevenson, he has been so consistent. He has a fumble in this one. Actually, I think he had 2. No, he had 1 fumble in this one. Brissett had 3. You can't turn the ball over against any NFL team, but especially the San Francisco 49ers. Fred Warner with a nasty pick 6. I think he might be the best linebacker in football right now. For San Francisco, I mean, they're making it work without the studs. Deebo Samuel, 2 carries for 14 yards, 3 for 58 in the air. Not a whole lot from Brandon Ayuk, 2 for 48. George Kittle, he had a good game, nice touchdown, but 4 for 45 for him. It's Jordan Mason again, 24 carries, 123 yards rushing and a touchdown, 2 for 37 in the air. Juwan Jennings, 3 for 88. This offense just continues to get it done with the guys that aren't really household names. So, we love to see it, and I think better things ahead for them. This team is going to continue to get better. They're hosting Arizona week 5. Like I said, that's a tough game. I feel like that's a bounce back game for Arizona. Makes me nervous if I have the Niners. But again, a game they should win. And for the Pats, they are hosting Miami. So, 2 teams that are reeling. They both need the win badly. Miami needs it more than the Patriots because they're still kind of fighting to stay alive in the AFC, whereas the Patriots are already looking ahead to the 2025 draft. So New England, the surprise home favorites, 1-point favorite in that game. Over/under is set at 35.5. That should tell you all you need to know about that one. Stay away. Next game, Browns and Raiders. The Raiders win this one 20-16. Only thing we need to talk about here is Davante Adams. It sounds like he has requested a trade. We'll see where he ends up. This offense is going to look a lot different if he's not a part of it. And we saw that today. They're going to struggle. Gardner Minshew, 130 yards passing. Maybe it's time to give Aiden O'Connell a chance. Deshaun Watson looked terrible again. A lot of drop passes on the receivers, but still didn't look good. 176 yards of interception, 1 touchdown, 3 sacks. Nothing from the run game. Nick Chubb is going to return to practice this week. I think he's going to play next week, if not the week after. Jerry Jeudy, lone bright spot for the receiving group, 6 for 72. Again, Amari Cooper, nothing. Couple of drops, 4 for 35 for him. To me, he is probably going to get traded, but if he doesn't, it's going to be a long year for all you Amari Cooper managers. For Cleveland, they're going to Washington next week. And for the Raiders, they are going to Denver. So a winnable game for them. But again, the Denver Broncos are 3-point favorites. Over/under set at 35.5 in that game. That's going to be an ugly one. So see what happens. Next one up, Chiefs, Chargers. Chiefs win this one 17-10. It was ugly. They needed a touchdown in the 4th quarter to break the tie. But, they get the job done, defending champs for a reason. The key story in this one, Rashee Rice goes down with a nasty knee injury. It was on a Patrick Mahomes interception. Rashee Rice is chasing the defensive back down. Patrick Mahomes dives at the defensive back's knees, takes out Rashee Rice, knee bends backwards. Sounds like an ACL tear. They're still doing testing. Not good either way. In the backfield, Kareem Hunt looks like the number 1 running back on this team. 14 carries, 69 yards. He looked like he had some juice. Carson Steele, another fumble. Looks like he's not going to see the field much anymore. And Travis Kelce, 7 for 89. Xavier Worthy, he is the one wide receiver that I want to keep an eye on. With Rashee Rice out, he needs to step up. He's not just a deep threat. He's a great route runner. He commanded a lot of targets at Texas. He's going to be the wide receiver I target in a lot of trades in fantasy leagues where people don't think that he is a legit wide receiver one. He certainly can be in this offense. 3 catches for him, 73 yards, and a long touchdown, 54-yarder. For the Chargers, Justin Herbert clearly is not right. He gutted this one out, 16 of 27, 179 yards passing, 1 touchdown. Not much from the run game, passing game. Ladd McConkey, 5 catches, 67 yards, and a touchdown. He continues to get it done. It's just going to be hard to trust anyone in this offense. So I think one week it's going to be Ladd, the next week it's going to be Quentin. So we got to, we got to be careful with that one. But I think, end of the day, it's going to be a run-first offense. And if they can't get the run game going, they're going to be in trouble. Kansas City taking on New Orleans in week 5. They're going to host them on Monday Night Football. Again, give me Kansas City in that one, -5, over-under at 42.5. I think that's fair. Kansas City should win that game. For the Chargers, they are on a bye, so the bye week comes at a great time for Justin Herbert. He can heal up that ankle, get that running game on track, and we'll see what they can do in week 6. Next game, Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills. For the Bills, throw this one out. It was an ugly game, bad game script. They had to play from behind early. Nice couple of throws by Josh Allen, but nothing we need to talk about there. Baltimore Ravens, it's all about Derrick Henry. 24 carries, 199 yards rushing, 1 touchdown. They tried so hard to get him 200, and they couldn't. Lamar Jackson, 6 for 54 and a touchdown on the ground. Isaiah Likely, 1 for 26 in the air. That's about it. Derrick Henry, 3 for 10 in the air. Another touchdown receiving. It's the Derrick Henry game. And so I think people are freaking out for week 1, even though Henry found the end zone. It was a split backfield, 50-50 split. Justice Hill was getting more work than people were expecting. Harbaugh comes out and says, listen, we didn't bring Henry in to take 30 carries a game. Doesn't matter. We don't need 30. We need 20. We need 22. We need 24 like he did against Buffalo. He's going to produce. This is the best offense Derrick Henry has ever played in. We're seeing that pay off in fantasy land, and he was my number 1 target in the 2nd round of every draft. Shocking that he fell out of the 1st round, to be honest. Next week, the Ravens are going to Cincinnati. That's going to be one of the best games of the week. Over-under set at 50.5. Baltimore, 2.5-point favorites on the road. That should be a fantastic game. And for Buffalo, get right game at Houston. Prove to everyone again why you guys are contenders. That should be a fun game as well. So a couple of, fantastic week 5 games coming up for these two guys. For the Monday night slate, Tennessee at Miami. This one was an absolute stinker. The second half gave us a little bit more offense, but again, just ugly. Will Levis gets injured. He threw an interception before he gets hurt. Mason Rudolph comes in relief. Doesn't really do too much. They didn't ask him to throw deep or anything. So ugly game. Tony Pollard, the lone bright spot on this for this offense. 22 carries, 88 yards, and a touchdown. He had a nice long 41-yard run. DeAndre Hopkins leads the team in receiving, 2 for 31. But again, Pollard, 2 for 20 receiving. Looks like the number 1 running back in this offense, but man, this was ugly. And for Miami, forget about it. Let's just move on. Tyler Huntley, 96 yards passing, adds a touchdown on the ground, but Jalen Wright leads the team in rushing. Devon Achan's nowhere to be found. Jalen Waddle leads the team in receiving with 4 for 36. Just so ugly. For Miami, get right game at New England next week. Let's see if they can get it on track. They need Tua back. I'm hearing Tua is coming back in week 8 at the earliest. We'll see about that. And then for the Titans, they are on a bye. So again, nice win. Get Will Levis right. Let's figure out what we're doing right in Tennessee. Lean on the run game. You have 2 great running backs. Will Levis needs to stop turning that ball over. In the last game for us, Seattle at Detroit, probably the best game of the week. And kudos to Seattle. The reason I wore this jersey tonight was because I thought they poured their hearts out in that one. They made it close. Detroit is a legit Super Bowl contender. I think they should be the favorite to come out of the NFC. They might be the Super Bowl favorite overall at this point, to be honest. But just a great team effort. Jared Goff looked good, 292 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. He also received a touchdown from Amon-Ra St. Brown. So just a great game for Goff. For the run game, both running backs had monster games. Jahmyr Gibbs, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns. David Montgomery, 40 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He also added 40 yards in the air. If you haven't seen the highlight of that reception, it was incredible. He broke 5 tackles, maybe 6. Should have been a 4-yard gain. He gets 40. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 6 for 45 and a touchdown. Again, he threw a touchdown as well as received a touchdown. So another great game for him. Jameson Williams, 2 for 80 and the long 70-yard touchdown for him. That's exactly what you're going to get. And for Jameson Williams managers, he is not boom bust. He's had 3 good, solid fantasy weeks producing for you guys, 1 down week. But in this offense, I want a piece of anyone on Detroit, and Jameson Williams was one of the cheapest ones in drafts. So kudos to anyone that drafted him. For Seattle, the story is Kenneth Walker. I mean, Detroit's run defense is one of the best in the league, if not the best. Walker goes 80 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns, adds 36 through the air, 4 catches. He looks like a number 1 running back, top 5 in fantasy. I mean, they're definitely happy to have him back, but this offense, you're gonna need a little more production than just 100 yards from DK Metcalf. So we'll see what they can do. They're good. They clearly can't contend with teams like Detroit just yet, but I like what I see out of Seattle. They are hosting the New York Giants in week 5. So again, a get right game for them. They should be able to win that game. 6-point favorites, over under set at 43.5. And for Detroit, they're coasting their bye week, feeling good about themselves. They are 3-1, 2-1 at home. This is a legit team, legit contender. So love seeing that. So that wraps up the week 4 recap, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I was able to kind of fill you in on any games that you didn't watch or any highlights that you weren't able to catch. But again, what I want to do here is also open up the chat and answer any questions. I think to make sure that you're following me on Twitter, interact with me there. I'm always able to answer start-sit questions. So hit me with anything you have. I'll get to a couple of questions here in the chat. One from, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name, but he is 0-4. He had Ayuk, Hill, London, Cooper, Deontay, Mason, Monty, Jacobs. Wow, this is a long one. Just traded Monty and Cooper for Metcalf and Stevenson, and then traded Chubb on my, okay, what do you think? 2 flex, 0.5 PPR, 10-man league. That's a tough one. There's a lot of names to kind of dissect there. So 2 flex. Number 1, you got to start Mason. He is firmly locked in. Montgomery's on bye. Pollard's on bye. Pacheco is injured. I see. And just traded Monty and Cooper for Metcalf and Stevenson. Okay, so you are in a really tough hole here. I think you can start Ayuk. I like Ayuk against the Arizona Cardinals. And then I would go Deontay Johnson. That's a tough matchup against Chicago. I'm going to go Ayuk and Drake London. Those are going to be my 2 flex for you, half-point PPR. But thank you for the question. Always like to have engagement in the chat here, so appreciate that. And yeah, I think we can wrap it up there. Please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, and again, hit that notification bell up at the top here so that you guys don't miss any of my videos. Follow me on Twitter at Fantasy Umpire. I'm going to try to do these weekly recaps every week. And yeah, let's go get that W in week 5. Thanks, guys.